It was an absolute crisis. We were losing about 33% of our customers every year. It was so competitive. And fundamentally, customers are the only source of revenue that you have. Loyalty is often counter-cyclical. So when the economy is struggling, that's when you really hold on to every customer that you've got. If there's a boom and everybody's just doing so much business, then they often forget about the loyal customers. Find a proposition that resonates with the customer, but that you're not simply giving away either margin or discounts where the customer didn't need that incentive. I'm sure you're familiar with consumer packaged goods.
Yeah.
So whether it's a nappy company or a chocolate company, anything that is being sold through an intermediary is missing that data. So where we as an industry see opportunities is in the CPG, for example, where they want to have relationships directly with the end users, not just for the end user to have a relationship with the retailer. They're capturing the behavior of people watching at home, but they're all connected on an app, so a digital strategy. So they'll be given a code, for example, from the race on screen, whether it's Daytona or something else, and they'll then be part of a community that's watching a race live. And that sense of being part of something really great that's happening in real time is just super, super exciting.
This episode is brought to you by SeedTag, the global contextual advertising company. SeedTag uses cutting-edge AI to place your ads directly within the content your audience loves, whether it's sports, lifestyle, or entertainment. It's all about making your brand a natural part of the experience. Their contextual AI analyzes content in real time, ensuring your ads are shown in the right place at the right time, without relying on personal data or intrusive tracking. Plus, with stunning premium visuals, SeedTag helps your brand stand out in all the right ways. So if you're ready to take your advertising to the next level, check out the link in the description and visit seedtag.com to learn more. Paula Thomas, welcome to Below the Fold.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim. I'm very excited to be here.
Likewise, I'm very excited to be here, and I'm really excited to cover this topic, which I haven't covered yet, which is a very important topic in marketing and beyond, of course, in business.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, we're going to cover loyalty and more specifically, loyalty marketing.
Yeah.
Right? And we actually are going to be recording 2 episodes. The first one will be about loyalty marketing, and there'll be also part 2, which is winning strategies for loyalty programs, right? So before we get started with loyalty marketing, do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Indeed, I'd love to. So thank you for the invitation, first and foremost, Ibrahim. I am a fellow podcaster, so that's probably the first and most important thing. I know it's tough to get guests. So Paula Thomas, as I said, I am the founder and CEO of Let's Talk Loyalty. So we have, would you believe, nearly 650 episodes talking just about this tiny niche within marketing. So as you can tell, it's a topic I'm extremely passionate about. I started the podcast back in 2019, coming out of just a place of frustration, running loyalty programs in different markets and never quite feeling I knew what I was doing. So I wanted to interview world-class loyalty programs. So I started doing that and publishing it. So here we are 5 years later.
Amazing. So it seems like I'm talking to the right person when it comes to loyalty.
Indeed. My husband calls me the Oprah of loyalty. So that's my positioning. So
fantastic.
We get a laugh out of that. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what a privilege. Let's start with defining what is loyalty, or maybe more specifically, what is loyalty marketing?
Indeed, yeah. It's a great place to start, Ibrahim, because I feel like there are lots of things that do drive loyalty. So I think we all know loyalty as an emotion. So I deliberately called the show Let's Talk Loyalty so we could talk about anything. So for example, I think there's unexpected ways of driving loyalty, like the tone of voice or the experience in a store. But for the purposes of today, and certainly for the purposes of our show, we define it quite narrowly. And I studied with the Loyalty Academy, as you won't be surprised to hear. And I suppose the definition that I really liked was the idea of driving profitable behavior change. So those 4 words really made a big impact on me. So I was like, okay, why am I spending all of this time? Why am I spending all of this money? Driving profitable behavior change is exactly what loyalty marketers strive to do. So we spend all of our time, particularly looking, I suppose, at structured loyalty programs. And I know we're going to get into lots of different types. So some of the most obvious ones are points-based programs, but there's partnerships, there's gamification, there's 100 different ways that you can structure loyalty and operate something that is designed to achieve that outcome.
Fantastic. And when you say driving profitable behavioral change, it sounds like we're going beyond just the customers. We're talking about potential customers as well.
Of
Or
course.
is this is loyalty limited to customers only?
It's a very good question, Ibrahim, very, very astute. So we would traditionally say it is taking the existing customers of the business, and that's probably by virtue of the fact that that's how most businesses operate. They very often have acquisition teams and they have dedicated budgets. And certainly when I started, predominantly in telecommunications, there was always a customer acquisition team. And then our job was focused on retention.
Right.
So when you talk about behavior change, I guess what we would say is there's an existing behavior that is being, I suppose, monitored and managed. And how can we drive that to a way that benefits the customer and benefits us as a business as well?
Makes a lot of sense. And why do you think loyalty is today more important than ever?
Honestly, there has never been a better time, Ibrahim. Like when I got into loyalty, the first program I was actually responsible for was just after the big recession, if you remember back in 2008. And again, in telecommunications, it was an absolute crisis. We were losing about 33% of our customers every year. It was so competitive. And fundamentally, customers are the only source of revenue that you have. So if you don't focus on retaining them, then absolutely, we would have been out of business in 3 years. So for me, it was a case of, first of all, understanding loyalty is often counter-cyclical. So when the economy is struggling, that's when you really hold on to every customer that you've got. If there's a boom and everybody is just doing so much business, then they often forget about the loyal customers. But certainly in this day and age, we've been through COVID, we've been through so many, I suppose, global shifts that more and more loyalty has risen to the surface. And COVID is probably the best example, actually, Ibrahim, because what happened at that particular time, particularly in industries, say like the airline industry, it became apparent through new accounting methodologies. I won't go into the detail, but essentially it became apparent that some loyalty programs were more valuable than the airlines that operated them, if you were looking directly at bottom line contribution. Wow. So there's this, I suppose, renewed interest in loyalty programs, renewed respect for loyalty programs, and everything we see in our industry is it is exploding and people are spending more and more in order to do a good job with them.
Fantastic. I came across businesses where their loyalty programs were cost centers. What are scenarios where this is a situation, a reality, or like?
Honestly, it is, I suppose, a balance between it's an art and a science, you know? So I think the absolute joy is to find a proposition that resonates with the customer, but that you're not simply giving away either margin or discounts where the customer didn't need that incentive. So there are so many different ways that we can absolutely connect with our customers, either emotionally or simply in terms of the transactions they might be doing. And if you don't understand, again, who are the customers where we can absolutely get them to spend more? Who are the customers that are probably already spending as much as they ever will? And therefore, those are customers. It's the 80-20 rule, actually. If I use a very simple analogy that we're all so familiar with, every single guest we have had on Let's Talk Loyalty has always said there absolutely is this ratio. 80% of your profits will come from 20% of your customers. So that's where you focus your time and attention. And of course, the ones just behind them. Because very often there's the opportunity to say, okay, yes, these customers can spend more, but there's also the middle segment that can also spend more. But then there's probably customers that, to be honest, they would be loss leaders. So it takes an awful lot of time and attention just to make sure that you understand who your customers are, understand who's spending with you, and where there's bigger opportunity to grow the business.
Amazing. And proper loyalty programs can drive higher CLV, right? Higher lifetime value.
Yeah.
A customer retention, it could lead to a customer retention that is 5 to 7 times cheaper than acquisition. And it could turn customers into advocates,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So this is far away from cost centers.
Yes.
Excellent. And we do see successful loyalty programs out there, right? We have the Starbucks rewards, we have Amazon Prime. Obviously, you mentioned airlines.
Yeah.
And some of them are also digital first, right? Loyalty programs. Speaking of, I guess, successful loyalty programs, what are industries that thrive with loyalty programs, you would say?
So this was a very important thing that I learned again in my loyalty journey. So first of all, I suppose it's probably easiest to say who doesn't need a loyalty program, because I think sometimes there is an expectation that perhaps a competitor, or we just see loyalty programs. We sometimes get calls as loyalty consultants where people are saying, I need a loyalty program, but they don't know why. And my favorite example in that context would be a brand like Apple. Apple does not need a loyalty program, does not have a loyalty program, nor will they. And the reason they don't is that their product is already differentiated. They have customers queuing down the street to come and buy their products. So why would they invest in something which is time consuming and is expensive? There's no more behavior they can incentivize. They can barely keep up with demand. Yeah. So that's a case where we don't need a loyalty program. So by definition, the type of industries that do need them is where there's a lack of differentiation. So one of the loyalty programs I worked on was for an energy company. So we were selling electricity. And as you can imagine, the electricity from this company is exactly the same as the electricity from that company. So how do you drive customer loyalty? The other thing I thought was fascinating when I worked there is we couldn't actually ask our customers to use more electricity. It would have been unethical. So as a business, the only behavior, which again, profitable behavior change, the only thing we could ask them to do was stay with us longer. So I suppose it's a long answer to a short question, but particularly we talk about, as you said, airlines.
Yeah.
So 2 airlines operating between, let's say, the same 2 cities. Let's assume that the price point is the same. How is the customer going to choose? Am I going to fly with this one or that one? And we live in a very competitive country. We have amazing airlines, 4 of them at least in the region. So how does somebody decide who to fly with? So there's matters of convenience, of course, matters of price, but ultimately it comes down to who is making me feel more special, more rewarded, and why would I then choose this airline over that? So airlines are huge. And in fact, airlines, I'll say, invented loyalty certainly within a computerized world. So before airlines, just a bit of history for you, we did have stamp-based programs dating back to like the late kind of 1890s. So where department stores in the US would give you a stamp if you came in regularly. So that was the simplest form of loyalty. But then airlines totally cracked it. And they literally said, do you know what? We're going to have all of these customer records, track their behavior, and the whole loyalty industry was born.
Wow.
Hotels were very quick to follow, as you can imagine. So I'm sure you're a member of some of the big hotel loyalty programs. And then retail, of course. So whether it's big department stores and luxury retail, but also even, I think it's really interesting, things like convenience retail. So I started doing some work a couple of years ago, even before the podcast actually, where I started really noticing that global brands like 7-Eleven or Circle K, even when your spend is $5, in the convenience store, of course, the fuel as well, but they were starting to invest in loyalty. And again, at a very minimal level where you would think, maybe somebody doesn't really care. They might refuel every couple of weeks, but yet it was still worth their while to invest in loyalty programs. So many sectors. But again, I suppose that understanding is that if the customer doesn't really see a difference in the product, they might see it in the brand. But if the product feels the same, then we need a way to differentiate ourselves.
Excellent. Well, I have a few comments on what you've shared.
Please.
The first one is on the need to have loyalty. So you mentioned differentiation. What about churn? So would you say potentially churn is another factor, that could, I guess, mean whether the business needs loyalty or not? So high churn, low churn. I can imagine telco, obviously, there's high churn.
Exactly.
Apple's probably very low churn, right? You're used
Totally.
to using an Apple device. You're probably going to use an Apple device your entire life,
Very
right?
loyal.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So where does churn come in? Is it as important?
Of course it is, Ibrahim. And it's one of the many, I suppose, business reasons to, I suppose, identify an opportunity to invest in loyalty. So churn reduction might be one, but there's other business models as well, for example. And again, you'll have seen the airline loyalty programs where they're becoming actually lifestyle programs now. So it's not just rewarding somebody when they fly, it might be rewarding them if I have a certain credit card, if I go to a certain mall. So here in Dubai, we've got the Dubai Mall. We have Skywards Everyday. So I don't know if you know, but if you have the Skywards Everyday app and an Emirates NBD, for example, partner credit card, which I do, and of course there are others. If I go into, let's say, Costa Coffee in Dubai Mall, I will get points from Costa Coffee, I will get points from Emirates NBD on my credit card, and I will get points from Dubai Mall. And
Okay,
that's apart from the fact I haven't flown anywhere, but they're all Skywards miles.
yeah.
So I suppose what you can see is that the industry is basically saying they want to connect with Paula or Ibrahim even when I'm not transacting. And I'm fundamentally not going to fly more often, of course, unless I need to. So they can't really drive that behavior. But what they can say is, let's keep Paula, I'm going to use the word addicted because that's actually how I feel.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I got a credit card from Emirates, and I was literally like going, I really want these Skywards miles because I can see my way to getting a free flight. And of course, that's an amazing redemption benefit. And we have a phrase that we would always say as well, where we would say that the burn drives the earn.
Right.
And that's a little bit back to front. So obviously earning is self-explanatory, but what we know as loyalty professionals is if somebody does get a redemption flight, or even it's the redemption bar of chocolate, they will then start earning more quickly. So their behavior, it's kind of like a flywheel.
Yeah.
And they suddenly just get really engaged and go, oh my goodness, I want more, I want more. So we can just tap into that innate collection behavior and just use all that psychology to drive mutually beneficial behavior.
That's a great example. I actually do have the Emirates Skywards credit card.
Great.
I'm not sure I need the app though. I know that I'm accumulating miles or points whenever I'm using it.
Yes.
But do I need the app?
You don't need it necessarily. So you'll get the credit card points as it is. But if you want the merchants, so the likes of Costa Coffee is always my favorite. So if you want the everyday points, that is a separate program. So you'd need to register for that
All
one.
right.
There you go.
I need to up my game in loyalty, it seems.
You're missing out, Ibrahim.
Excellent. Great example as well. The other comment I had is on using stamps. You still do see coffee shops.
Yeah.
And I guess F&B or industry stores or restaurants using stamps.
Yeah.
Fast food restaurants.
Totally.
As well, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's working for them. It's got to be working, right?
It depends how it's executed. So I think the paper-based ones are, I suppose, a bit of a recipe for disaster. Because they're just very easy to obviously get multiple stamps from your friend in the coffee shop. So there's a lot of risk of fraud, I would say, with the old-fashioned approach. And of course, you're missing the big opportunity. So as loyalty programs, we really want to learn. We want to understand, what does Ibrahim like? What is his regular cup of coffee? So a paper stamp card will never do that.
Right.
But of course, if we've got the digital app and you mentioned digital first loyalty, then absolutely, first of all, the fraud prevention is there. Secondly, you've given us some of your data. And in the, I suppose, most extreme and most famous example, Starbucks, particularly in the US market, is unbelievable because what they get people to do is top up in advance. So you prepay. So they avoid all of the credit card charges of people paying with credit cards. And they literally now have been almost as big as a bank in terms of their cash reserves. So it's incredible, but it's also a win-win because it does mean I don't have to pay at the till. I can prepay on the Starbucks app, go in, get my stars, get my coffee. And again, they get the cash up front. So so it's a really nice model.
And there's a gold mine of data that you can extract on a single user from the app, right?
Exactly.
From an app SDK.
Yeah.
Excellent. Other industries that we might have not touched on are fitness and health industry, but also subscription-based
Yeah.
businesses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like Amazon Prime, maybe other streaming services. These are platforms that
Yeah.
have very successful loyalty models.
For sure. And we would often debate that actually as an industry, Ibrahim. Amazon, do you want to define it as an e-commerce business? Do you want to define it as a subscription business? Who cares? As far as I'm concerned, I have noticed that because I'm an Amazon Prime subscriber, more and more, even of my everyday grocery shopping is moving to Amazon. So it used to be a case where I went to my favorite grocery store, I would shop online, everything would be delivered. But they had things like, for example, a higher minimum spend, the delivery might take a little bit longer. So then I started to realize, well, the delivery fee is already paid with Amazon. So things like water, for example, which I'm never going to carry home, but Amazon will deliver it and literally it's the next day. So from a psychology point of view, it's called the sunk cost. I'm sure you've heard that term, where I know as a consumer, I've already paid that subscription fee. The delivery's already included. So why don't I order more with Amazon? Right. So now even my grocery spend is going there. It's not just the books or the electronics that I might have bought in the past, but new categories of spend. And even if you have seen, I don't know if you've noticed it, but they also have repeat purchases. So they will say, oh, great, you're getting your cat food. I have 2 cats. And they'll say, do you want to get that every month? And that's super clever because now they're tapping into the fact that I don't ever want my cats to go hungry. So why would I not just get that repeat purchase through Amazon? So I think it's an extraordinary model. And again, I think people kind of looked at it in the beginning and just kind of went, oh my goodness, it's just so easy. Definitely not an easy thing to do because they gave up all the delivery fees. But I think the behavior change has proven it to be very worthwhile.
Excellent. Before we move into the next segment, I just want to end this one with one more question for you.
Sure. Yeah.
One last question, which is, are we headed towards a giant loyalty program? Because we keep talking about these businesses consolidating their different services, right? And the different, I guess, value chain or expanding the value chain, I guess, that they offer to their customers. Are we headed towards a consolidation or a form of or like a super app where everything we do is one loyalty program?
It's a great question. I think here in the Middle East where we are, it feels like it is at the point of saturation, if I'm honest. There are so many programs and they're being so well run that I would not be surprised if some of them did start to consolidate. I think if we look to, I suppose, quite different markets, mature in a different way, like China, for example, they literally only have super apps. So absolutely all of the behavior is consolidated in one place. So I think it very much depends by market. Again, I know we're obviously sitting here together in Dubai, but in some markets like the US, for example, some of the attempts to consolidate have failed. So we would, call them coalition programs where, for example, in the UK, you might be familiar with Nectar. So that would be a big coalition program bringing together lots of different businesses, for example, airlines and retail and grocery and fuel, all into one program. That, for example, as a model has not worked in the US market, but it has worked here in this region and again in the UK. Right. So it's hard to know where it's going to go, but I think the ambitions are ever greater. There's new airlines launching in this region as well. And I think we've got a lot to look forward to.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake, I suppose. There are too many stakeholders. Everyone needs to be happy.
Exactly.
Not everyone can be happy, obviously.
Yes, exactly.
It's definitely a lot at stake. Cool. So next one is the pros and cons of loyalty marketing, right?
Okay.
Let's start with the pros, right?
Yeah.
Which are the benefits.
Yeah.
I've listed here increases retention rates, encourages repeat purchases. Any benefits that come to mind?
So for me, the first one is back to the simple point that your customers are your only source of revenue. And what we all want as business owners is 100% share of that customer's wallet. So that's the first objective. So again, whether it's airlines or retail, we want to know if Ibrahim is spending on an airline, he's spending with my airline. So that is the first opportunity. The way to achieve that, of course, is understanding what matters to you. So we touched on it a little bit earlier. So data is the new oil, and we absolutely need the structure and discipline of a loyalty program in order to have your permission, first of all, to capture data around your behavior, to understand what it is that you might want, and then give you targeted offers. So again, you start to behave back in a way that is being loyal to us. So the data is very often the single biggest opportunity. So many brands, and I think the sector that is most still struggling with this, just to give you an extreme example, would be CPG. And I'm sure you're familiar with consumer packaged goods.
Yeah.
So whether it's a nappy company or a chocolate company, anything that is being sold through an intermediary is missing that data. So where we as an industry see opportunities is in the CPG, for example, where they want to have relationships directly with the end users, not just for the end user to have a relationship with the retailer, the grocery store, for example.
Right.
So loads of benefits. So customer insight, absolutely the 100% share. The advocacy, I guess that's the one that is sometimes harder to measure. We do have different metrics. We would call it Net Promoter Score. NPS is quite a famous one, where we would actually say to somebody, would you recommend this airline or this hotel? And that in itself has massive value. And the final piece I would touch on, actually, I just interviewed NASCAR. I don't know if you know the National Association for Stock Car Racing in the US. So they would be, again, car racing. And what they're doing is incentivizing people to watch the sport, of course. People are very loyal to cars, they're loyal to drivers, but they don't always get to a racetrack. So they're capturing the behavior of people watching at home, but they're all connected on an app, so a digital strategy. So they'll be given a code, for example, from the race on screen, whether it's Daytona or something else, and they'll then be part of a community that's watching a race live. And that sense of being part of something really great that's happening in real time, it's just super, super exciting. So I think for me, the most exciting part is probably community. It's harder to do. It's probably still an early phase of our industry, but so many benefits. I could talk for a long time on all of this.
Yeah. And I think community is it's recurring across other sectors of conducting business.
Totally.
Right. There's an increasingly there's increasingly more importance on how much, I guess, community is adding value to a business, not just for loyalty, but also for customer acquisition as well, across several aspects. Downsides or cons.
Indeed. Okay. It's hard. At the risk of oversimplifying. I think first of all, really identifying a value proposition which is unique to your business is very hard to do. And actually, just to go back to your point about community, I did a beautiful interview with IKEA, and they had a fabulous insight, and again, then a fabulous loyalty proposition. And it was around the idea that so many of their members have brilliant ideas for interior decoration. So IKEA as a brand doesn't have to be the only place you can go for inspiration, where the community can talk to each other and say, why don't you have a kitchen like ours or whatever? So they tapped into that particular opportunity. But it is a difficult thing to identify something that's that unique where the brand can facilitate. So it's not an easy thing to identify. It definitely requires considerable marketing technology in order to facilitate. So, for example, if it is a points-based program, it has to have the same level of security as a bank would have. So it is a real asset. There is huge value there. The data can never be compromised. The balances can never be compromised. So significant investment.
Cost of implementation.
And then I suppose the really big one is proof of incremental value. So every marketeer, I think, struggles with this idea of, causation and correlation, to use a couple of technical terms. So again, when I started, it was a case of just because somebody's a member of your loyalty program, and they spend more, does it mean they spend more because of your loyalty program?
Right.
So identifying what's driving the behavior is the hardest point. So that's probably the biggest con. It's very hard to say categorically, Ibrahim flew with us because of our loyalty program. So proving that's very difficult.
Have there been any successful ways of measuring the incrementality?
There are. So what I would tend to say, Ibrahim, is there are people who specialize in doing that.
Yeah.
I wish I had known about them when I was running some programs.
Yeah.
But absolutely. So there are actuarial scientists who can come in and isolate a cohort of customers, look at their behavior, and then find an identical cohort that, for example, are members of the loyalty program, incentivize these, ignore these essentially, and then look at what happens with the two.
Right.
So it's a test and learn approach,
Yeah.
but I do tend to feel it's very sophisticated.
Yeah.
I was just consulting indirectly with some friends of mine in fuel sector.
Yeah.
And again, they brought in some amazing consultants. But again, it's a team of statisticians and analysts
Yep.
who are really there going, okay, what are the models that are working? What exactly is the lever that's driving this performance? And how can we prove that? And that to me is where the secret sauce is. And as an industry, we still have a lot of work to do there.
Right. I'm sure it also takes a big amount of data.
Massive.
And a huge track record, right, of behavioral change, of and perhaps months and years, right, of data around the customer, and also they would probably look at other aspects of how the business adds value to the customer. They probably look at marketing as well, right? Probably look at
Is there
product
a price
launches,
change? Is the climate change? Is the
competition.
recession? Exactly, more competitors. So every market is absolutely unique, and every sector within every market is unique. So it is certainly very special.
Sounds a little bit like a MMM study, or like a marketing mix modeling type study.
I guess so.
Except it's not just marketing. I guess it's
we would call it probably different things, but I'm sure it's the same thing.
Right. Other downsides listed are listed here are customer fatigue. Over-reliance on discounts. That's an interesting one. Obviously, we don't want to incentivize our customers to change their behaviors based on discounts, right? That doesn't make sense. And do you have any good examples of success and failures of loyalty marketing? Other examples that you would like to share?
Sure, absolutely. So I would say my favorite loyalty program in the world, at the risk of overstating it, but it is a very mature program coming out of South Africa, and it's from a health insurance company, which, to be honest, is not something that is considered the most exciting sector normally. But the company is called Discovery, and the program is called Vitality. And essentially what they said is, first of all, if our customers behave in a way that they are healthier, so if they go to the gym, if they exercise, then their health insurance claims will be lower. So how can we incentivize that behavior for our mutual benefit? And they started it way back, 1997, in a very simple way where they said, okay, let's get a discount for Paula to go to the gym. Okay, so now it's more affordable, so I might be more likely to go. Then they literally started to layer in all sorts of reasons for me to become healthier. And that has become a program of 40 million members and world-class loyalty program. They're in the UK, they're in the US market, so absolutely extraordinary, to the point where they were actually able to prove that people who are members of Vitality and fully engaged, of course, were less likely to die during COVID. They absolutely proved that. And the CEO, the founder, is an actuary himself. So again, very statistically minded. So that to me is absolutely an extraordinary example, and definitely one we can look to for inspiration.
Amazing. On to the impact of AI on loyalty marketing, excuse me. We have three big points here. The first one is how AI is revolutionizing the loyalty programs. We're talking about hyper-personalization, automated customer engagement, predictive analytics. Does that make sense to you?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of use cases, Ibrahim. What I would say, to be honest, is again, because we've been computerized and studying customer behavior since the 1980s, AI is just a more sophisticated version of things we've already been doing as an industry. So there are definitely new use cases. So content creation, of course, using AI, customer service using AI. But I suppose the biggest impact is around that segmentation. And as you said, hyper-personalization. One of the case studies I came across recently showed a double in the performance of a campaign in the CPG sector, where AI technology was used to analyze, again, millions of data points to then execute on a campaign with much more relevance and targeting than a non-AI segmented campaign.
Right.
So it's definitely working.
Yeah.
I still feel we're very early days,
Yeah.
but yeah, lots to see and lots to watch.
Right. Cool. Would you say that AI-driven gamification is something to look out to in the future? A place where companies can incentivize customer actions with interactive rewards? Or is it? Or this doesn't sound too futuristic? Sounds like this is already happening now.
Gamification is a thing.
Yeah.
The combination of AI-driven gamification, I've not heard anybody talk about that as yet,
Yeah.
but gamification is absolutely one of the best levers to drive people to do, even boring things. I interviewed Microsoft and Dell actually, but it was the guy from Microsoft, I remember, saying that if they need to get people even to do something really dull and boring, like, accept new terms and conditions, if they gamify it, then the behavior is so much more engaged and they'll get much better engagement from people and they will behave like that.
Right.
Whereas if you just send somebody a long email and it's complicated and have to accept terms and conditions, people are like, oh my God, no, I'm not going to do that. So
Right.
gamification is super cool. But yeah, there's lots of different ways to execute on that, of course,
Right.
as well.
Now onto probably the most interesting segment of this episode, which is how much should businesses invest in loyalty marketing?
Oh, big one.
Right? Budget considerations. What's a percentage, do you think?
It's a great question. So there was some research came out recently, and from companies that do have loyalty programs, the marketing budget was consuming about 31%. So it is a significant spend. So yeah, that would be typical for a company. So again, if it's a strategy that makes sense for your sector and for your country and for your demographics, then that's what you should be thinking about.
Right. And now, how about measuring the ROI of loyalty? Would we need to be looking at CLV?
There's lots of different metrics, to be honest, Ibrahim. So lifetime value is one, net promoter score is another one. We would talk about recency, frequency, monetary value, RFM is another one.
Yeah.
So it probably depends on the sector. Some, for example, would also talk about, like, there's other metrics, some programs, again, sell their points and sell their miles. One of my favorite examples was Qantas, actually, where, and this is quite an old piece of information, but it's still true, but where they were making more money selling Qantas miles than all of their international flights combined.
Right.
So it's an incredibly profitable business. So it might be a case where a loyalty program is operating its own P&L as a business, and the business objective might be specifically bottom line contribution of selling the actual currency. So again, it depends on, what that business might be, and exactly what the business drivers are that you're trying to use the loyalty program to change.
Right. And what would be your advice for small businesses? Where should they start?
I would say keep it simple.
Referral programs, point system, exclusive memberships.
Totally. I would say, first of all, get your core business really right. So back to the Apple example,
Yep.
Really do everything you can to delight your customer. Because I suppose in its simplest terms, loyalty, the first thing that you can do to make a difference is demonstrate loyalty to your customer. Really take care of them. So one of my favorite guests, actually, and he created Net Promoter Score. Fred Reichheld is his name. He's a very famous guy in our industry. He would talk about the unbeatable strategy of loving your customers. So it was really strange to interview him, and he kept using the word love. And I'm like, that's really strange for this business conversation to be going in that direction. So yeah, small business, large business, listen to your customers, love them, ask them what they need and deliver that, and then think about the points and the prizes separately.
Love that. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Paula. This is the end of the first episode. It was very nice. I really enjoyed it. To our listeners and viewers, if you found today's episode valuable, please subscribe, leave us a review, leave us a comment. Where can we find you, Paula?
You can find me on letstalkloyalty.com, of course.
Yeah.
We also have a separate website, which is loyalty.tv.
Very good.
And of course, Paula Thomas on LinkedIn. I'm very easy to find, the Oprah of loyalty.
Very good. Well, let's, I guess, part, and we'll come back again for another episode.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.